Name and your address, and then that way I'll
Okay.
know it's at the right level.
I'm Bill Woodham. I'm William A. Woodham, better known as Bill Woodham. I live at 307 Boulevard Street.
In the Grange.
In the Grange, Georgia.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Now, you were starting to tell me about what the Depression was like.
Oh yes, I started to tell you those were trying times back in those days. We were all poor folks. We just lived from one week to the next, one paycheck to the next. uh, the union come in here promising us better working conditions, more money, all this, that, and the other, and actually we fell for it. Uh, I guess 90% of the people working here joined the union. In fact, I joined against my own will back in those days because I was a young man. I was about, let's see, 33. I was about 21 or 2, something like that. I was born in 1912. I just married, had one child, and it was pretty hard on us. My wife and I both had to work to make ends meet. Didn't make much money back in those days. But like I say, 90% of the people joined the union. I started to tell you I joined against my will because I was trying to learn to fix machinery, what we call looms, in the weave room. And simply because I didn't belong to the union, the old loom fixers that knew how to fix looms wouldn't give me any information, wouldn't tell me anything, so I had to join in self-defense, so to speak. But I joined the union. I had very few meetings I made. I didn't enjoy the meetings. And when the strike come off, I was in kind of bad standing with the union. I hadn't paid my dues. But they come around and told me they was going to shut the weave room down at a certain time. I just what the hour was, 12 or something like that. Anyway, I was among the first ones out the gate. I didn't want to stay around and see any violence, take part in any violence, whatever. I was among the first ones to go out the gate. I went home, got my wife and kid, a baby. He was just a baby. And just toughed it out until the strike was over. But I went back to work before the strike was settled. I had to. I didn't have the money. And my wife and child were getting hungry, as well as myself. I had to go back to work. No other way to make a living, making the money. Things got pretty rough around here for a while. And the National Guard came in, helped keep down violence. Had it been for the National Guard, we'd probably had a rough time around here. The people working in the plant, we'd probably had a rough time had it not been for the National Guard. There just wasn't enough police force here in the Grange to take care of all the troubles. But my wife and I both went back to work. We worked on until we retired. I retired in 1977. I came to work in 1928 and worked continuously up until 1977. There was some rough times during that strike while it was in progress. Like I say, I hope I never see anything like that again. Your next door friend turn against you. But if you were working, they weren't, you're on opposite sides of the fence. And you meet them on the street, they turn their head and wouldn't speak to you. And it was just bad. But families got busted up, And some moved away from me. I never heard of them anymore. some stuck around, finally went back to work. It is just a bad time for us here. We just wasn't situated to hope for a strike. We didn't know any better. We had to promise higher wages, you know, better living conditions, better working conditions. That's we fell for it. But the strike progressed. Things got worse. My mother and father was still out on strike. My brothers and sisters, they were out on strike. But it made my father move. He moved to a house out in the country, which later burned down on him. I got the mill company to let me move into his house so I could take care of some of his furniture. He was willing to give me some of the furniture, you know, bedroom suite, which I needed very bad at that time. It worked out pretty well. He had a pretty good garden spot at his house. So it worked out pretty convenient for me. The management company was nice enough to let me move into his house when he moved out. There's just a lot of things went on here when the National Guard moved in. Or they started moving people out of the houses. One man got killed. A soldier ran a bayonet through him. I guess he had to do that in self-defense, I don't know. They never did anything to the soldier, I don't know just what happened. But the man done his best to try to keep the soldiers from moving the furniture out of the house. They just had to run a bayonet through him. And my own brother, he was arrested, and he was watching such as that go on, you know. They arrested all that was standing around watching. Took him to a military camp up here in Fort McPherson. Kept him about a week. Turned him loose. Everything is so bad, I hate to talk about it myself. This brings back some bad memories. I hope I never see anything like that. People nowadays are more knowledgeable about things like that. TV has been a big help. People.
Yeah. Okay. How much were your union dues?
$1 per month.
And
I wasn't able to pay the $1 per month.
yeah, that's a lot of money back then.
Back then it was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Now, the people, you said the people moved away who took part.
Yeah, so the people that took part in the strike and didn't go back to work, they were forced to move. They had to get out of the company house. The mill company owned the houses.
I see, yeah.
They had to vacate the houses. In fact, threw a lot of them out on the streets. The furniture out on the streets while the National Guard watched, kept peace. But, a lot of them moved around various other towns and got jobs in different places, different mills, and some of them I've never heard of again. Some eventually came back, you know. They just kind of died down, was all forgotten about.
And there's never been a union here since that.
No, sir.
That's what I thought. One of the things that we've been trying to figure out is that when you first started working the mills, how much did you earn?
I think it was 12.5 cents per hour.
And then when Roosevelt came in, something happened.
Yeah, so I believe they called it the NRA. Came into effect. The 8-hour working shift came in. We've been working from 10 to 12 hours a day. 10, 11, 12 hours a day, according to when you worked and where you worked. Well, Roosevelt came in, he put in the 8-hour shift, you know, and a guaranteed wage. I believe it was 25 cents per hour we started off at. Of course, 40 hours a week. That's $12 an hour. I mean, $12 a week. And we'd only been making, from $6 to $8, $9 a week. Things looked better after that. Things began looking better after.
Well, that's why we were trying to figure out why this strike when things were so much better than they had been.
The strike took place before the NRA come in effect, I believe it, didn't it? No, wait a minute.
The strike was in 34, NRA came in 33.
That's right. The strike here that hurts the bad was in 35.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I say, those men come in here promising better wages, better living conditions, better working conditions. We all fell for it.
Because I just can't figure out when you had your hours cut from 12 to 8, and you had your wages almost doubled.
That's
why
right.
was this big surge all over the country for a strike?
I don't understand that myself. We were all making a bare living. That's all we were making. But
Did the working conditions change after you had shorter hours?
yes, sir, they changed. Working conditions changed. Mr. Calloway, he continuously improved his plants here all the time. That's one thing I give him credit for. And the older Mr. Calloway, Senior, Foley Calloway Senior, had already passed away. He died in 1928. The year I came to work, he had a plant, the textile mills here. But his two sons took over, Mr. Kaysen and Mr. Fuller Jr. And those two men, they must have been geniuses because they pulled the mills through all that hard time and everything and continuously improved the plants. They built them into one of the best textile industries in the world.
Have you seen Mr. Calloway recently?
No, sir, I haven't seen him in a couple of years.
I just wondered what kind of condition he's in, because we like to talk with him in that.
He might talk with you at his home, but he's hooked up to a breathing
That's
outfit.
what I knew he was having heart problems.
He's having problems with his breathing. He can't go out.
Yeah.
You'd have to go to his home.
Yeah.
Now, I understand Mr. Langford talked with him. Mr. Mark Langford went to his home and talked with him.
Yeah.
But he was, like I say, he was hooked to those breathing machines, oxygen machines.
We were talking to D.W. Brooks the other day. We interviewed him. He's head of Gold Kiss, this big corporation, and he was recommending that we see Calloway.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. He was describing what the industry was like then.
Well, he had a rough time pulling plants through that strike period, but he pulled them through it. How, I don't know, because if he'd have told me, I wouldn't have sense enough to understand. But he managed to pull his mills through. They didn't have to shut any of them down, anything like that. He kept them running, kept them.
Now, this is one of the few places where, after the 34th strike, there was, within the next year, there was another big strike.
Oh, it
Here
wasn't.
in 35.
Yes, sir.
I just wondered what was the cause of that.
Like I say, these union organizers came in here offering us better conditions, more money, better working conditions, better living conditions, all that. If we grouped together in a union, and we fell for it.
Now, you mentioned that your brother was in that thing that happened in Noonan, that they got taken to Fort McPherson.
Well, it happened here in LaGrange. He was a bystander. He's watching the people, throw the people's furniture out on the street, move stuff out. And Naturally, all of them, all the bystanders were kind of mad about it because they were
Yeah.
strikers too, and they arrested all of them.
So this is something we didn't know, that in addition to the ones in Noonan, they also picked up some people here and took them to Fort McPherson, which I didn't
Yes.
realize. This is you're giving us some new
Yes,
information.
sir. Really, the reason I know, my brother was one of them.
Mhm.
He was taken to Fort McPherson. He was younger than I, but he had just started working in the plant.
Is he still around?
No, sir, he's passed away.
Sorry.
He passed away 2 years ago. 2
Did
years
he
ago
tell
this
you about
past
what it was like
April.
up there?
Oh, he said it was all right. I had taken military training before, and I asked him questions about food and everything, you know. Right funny, before he was arrested and put up there, he would eat grits or rice. So I know just to look at it, turn his stomach.
Yeah.
But he said he eat grits up there at Fort McPherson for breakfast and enjoyed it. Said it was good. Says either that or starve. But made him eat grits. He later, after that, went into the Army. He put up about 20 years in service, 15 or 20 years in service. He came out at the end of World War II. Well, he was discharged just before the end of World War II. A bomb had went off close to him and just burst his ear up, toward his hearing. He was coming back to the States the same time I was going out to the Pacific, the war zone. I'd hoping to get to see him, but I never did get to see him.
No.
But we got to comparing notes after we got back home, you know. And according to the dates, he was on his way back to the States when I was headed
Yeah.
out to the
That
Pacific.
That happened a lot.
Yes.
You said your brother went into the armed services
Yes.
afterwards. Why didn't he go back into working in the mill
He did work in the mill a while.
after
Yes.
after he was in Fort McPherson?
Yes. He worked a while, but there just wasn't much chance of getting good jobs here. Too many people out of work and everything, you know. Young person without any skill didn't have a chance much. So he went into service.
You
You went to
started
Army.
working, how old were you again?
I was 14 and a half when I went to work. The National Child Labor Law said you had to be 14 and a half years old. I went to work in 1926. That's when I started to work.
How much education
It
did
was
you
in
get?
August. I finished the 8th grade, 1 year of high school.
Oh,
That was 1 year of high school back then, the 8th grade.
well, that's further than most textile workers went at that time.
Yes, sir. Usually when they got up old enough to go to work in the mill, they come out of school and work,
Yeah.
help feed the family. Well, in my family, there was 8 children.
Huh.
And my mother and daddy worked to try to feed us. And as we got old enough to go to work, we went to work in the mills.
And you were living in a mill house then?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mill come and rent us houses. Sometimes they give us a rent.
Mm.
In fact, I think when we was struck, we was getting rent free, $1 a month for a house. I think it was a 4-room house. Real cheap, especially upside the rent today.
Oh, you say that again.
Things have changed a lot since those days. And
Just saw in the paper the other day that they said 1/3 of the American public is poor because of their housing.
I imagine so.
It costs
Could
so
be.
much to rent now or so much to buy.
Yes. Well, you take rent around here, it takes about 1/4 of your wages. If you get out and check, people making around $1,000 a month, they pay around $250 a month for a house. And it's about that standard around here in this part of
Well, I know at
country.
New York University where I teach, when students leave the place, they're gonna spend almost half their income in rent.
Yeah.
It's just fierce.
Real estate has kind of got a grip on us around here.
It's true.
Nothing we can do about it because we don't have the money.
That's right.
Person had a lot of money, we could go out and buy him a house when he got married, you know. Don't have to pay a fool paying rent. He have that to put it behind him. But nowadays, when a young man gets married, well, you got to budget, make out a budget. So much for rent, so much for groceries, living expenses, and medical expenses. You just take a chance on that. You don't budget anything for that unless you put it in a bank.
Yeah.
Usually it's spending money to other things. When you have a big medical bill, they put that in the budget to pay so much on it.
Well, the one big thing that they've got now that we didn't have back then was federal deposit insurance.
Yes, sir.
You remember when the banks closed, I'm sure.
Yes, sir. I remember when they closed up.
That was a frightening time.
As in 29, I believe it was. Everything went busted.
Yeah.
Started the Great Depression. A local bank here, I had $5 in it. It went busted.
Yeah. When did the Callaways start introducing the things like the picker counters and the efficiency machinery?
That was long about the time I went to work in 26. When I went to work in 26, my father was a weaver. I had two sisters that were weaving, and they got paid by the piece. They'd run what you call a cut.
Yeah.
I forget now how many yards it was in a cut. They get so much per cut that they weave. And when they doffed a roll of cloth, one week it might make a good deal of money. Next week it might be real low, depending on how the cloth come off the loom. And they started putting pick clocks, they call it, pick counters, on the loom back then, right after I started to work. I know a lot of people try to beat those pick clocks and take them loose, you know, and run them up by hand. A lot of people got fired for that. They're just trying to make more money, trying to beat their way through life.
Yeah, a fellow in Kannapolis, North Carolina, was telling me about that. He said he learned to do that, but he said you had to be careful because if you cheated too much, they'd spot it.
That's right. I remember one night, I found one of my pick clocks, had to quit counting, you know. I reached over and I could turn the thing by hand, it wouldn't run the clock up. And the supervisor, I told him about it, thought maybe he'd give me a little few picks on it somewhere. He told me, he said, just stand there with your hand and run it up. I told him, well, what are you going to do? I'd get caught and get fired for it.
Yeah.
He said, well, that's the only way I can do it. He said, I can't give you no picks on it. He didn't have anything to do with the amount of picks that was on the loom. You know, it was red. They'd have a person come around each end of each shift and read the pick clocks. That's where you got paid.
Remember the lady we were interviewing who said she was the supervisor of, she checked that she
kept production sheets.
That's right, that's what she did, yeah.
Yeah, the production department there, they figured out our pay by the amount of picks. That's the revolution of the loom made, you know. But at the end of each shift, they'd send a person around to read those clocks and record them. able to figure out our pay by the number of picks we made, as well as production, how much production we made. You had to make around 90% to be considered a good hand, make good wages.
Do you remember the Bedo men?
Oh yes, I remember them well. I never know them personally, but I remember the system, Bedo system. Right funny. I was headed toward Japan when the war ended. I was on the island of Midway when the war ended, and I ran into a lot of my friends from back here, you know. After the war had ended, they were headed back home. I told them the reason the war ended, the Japs heard I was coming to Japan to install the Bedo system over there, and they threw up their hands and quit. That was just a joke I pulled on them.
You might tell Judy what the Bedo system was.
The Bedo system was really a fair way of paying anybody for their work. But so few people had enough education to understand it. Say for each number of picks of a loom, you got so many bees. Just the B apostrophe S, bees. You had to get 60 bees to make a bee hour.
To make a pay hour.
What you call a bee hour.
A bee hour.
Yes, and your production is figured by those bee hours. If you got less than 60 bee hours during your shift, you went in the red. Your production is put up in the red. If you went over 60 bee hour, you was put up in blue ink or black ink, and you made a premium. So if you went over what we call a standard wage there, not standard wage, but the amount you're supposed to, were required to make to hold your job. If you went over that, a good worker could make it and go over it, make premium. If you went over that level, that 60 bee hour level, you was paid a premium on what you made over that. But if you just made 60 bee hours or less, all you got was just what their wage hour was. And I think a wage hour was 25 cents when it struck, you know. And 35.
Well, now these men were time and motion studying too, weren't they?
Yes, sir.
How did that work?
They would come out and put those counters on the loom, you know, I see how many revolutions per minute the loom made. They'd figure that, how many, each revolution of the loom was called a pick. And we got paid by the pick. Men would study the type of fabric you were weaving, like whether you was making weaving or whether you were spinning or carding, whatever it was. They'd come out and figure a load, you might call a workload, and they'd try to give you what's called a fair workload, and figure at it a 60 bee hour. And if you made that 60 bee hour and went over it, you got premium on it. 90% of people, you always made premium. But there's some few that just couldn't make it.
But they seem to be, these men didn't seem to be very popular, these engineers.
No, sir, they weren't so very popular. Of course, they were our own friends and neighbors. They'd come
they
around.
weren't just people, engineers they hired somewhere, they were.
They were people that worked here,
Oh, I see, I didn't realize.
high school students,
I see, yeah.
or such as that. They would come in and put them to work, you know. They'd teach them how to go out and find how many revolutions
I see, yeah.
a machine made per minute, all that. And they'd bring all this information back into the production office, and those engineers, they would figure the workload.
I see.
And they'd always try to give you a fair workload where you could make your 60 B hour, make what was required of you. And if you applied yourself and worked, you could make it go over it.
Now, did they start hiking those requirements up, increasing those requirements?
They would vary
Mm-hmm.
at times. Now, one of the trouble we had down there at the plant was some of the people figuring that production wasn't too well on figures themselves. I know I almost had a fight down there one day. My wife had been put on a job, a big stretch out job, you know, stretched out the job, and it worked her terribly that day. And I knew she'd make a good deal of money, extra, by the way she was working. But the next day, when the production sheet put up, she was in the red. I went and got the supervisor. I'll tell you this, I was a prize fighter back in my young days before I married. And the men around the community kind of held respect for me as far as fighting was concerned. I got my supervisor. I told him what the trouble was. He said, come on, says, I didn't have a thing to do with that. I got my time sheet. There's a payroll at what looms my wife had been assigned to, you know. He said, let's go up here and talk to the production man. Well, the production man's a good friend of mine. We went and I sat down, had a nice talk with him, you know. I told him what the trouble was. He got the sheets out and looked, and don't know what happened, but on the payroll sheet the supervisor had, it didn't compare with the sheet on the production sheet.
Mm-hmm.
They had left off about half the looms she had. And when they figured out what she had made over what the company allowed her to make. They couldn't pay her what she made. Now, that was unfair, but we had to go along with it. But I intended to fight about that. I loved my wife. I didn't want to see her have to work like a slave like that and then come up in the red. But the supervisor, he seemed to think a lot of me. He just told me, come on, let's go see the production man. He figured it. I think it's wrong myself. He had doubts about it. We went up there, and like I say, the production man, doing all that figuring, he was a friend of mine too, a good friend. We sat down, talked about it. He got the sheets out and looked, and sure enough, there was a mistake. Who made the mistake, nobody knows. But my wife had come up in the red, and she had made so much money, premium, that the rules of the company didn't allow them to pay her that much. They had to pay her the limit they could pay her. That's one of the things wrong with the bidot system is the workers didn't have enough education to understand just how to figure it. And a lot of times the people that figured on it didn't know how to figure it.
Do you think that had anything to do with the strike?
No, sir, I don't think it did. I think the biggest thing about the strike is that people just wanting to make more money and have a better way of living. We live so poor all our lives, you know, hoping for a better chance at a better life. This man come along, promised it to us, and we fell for it.
Who were the men who came? Do you remember any of them?
I don't remember the names.
Yeah.
That's been, let's see, in 35, that's been 50
A
odd
long
years
time
ago.
I know, yeah. But they weren't from here around here.
No, they weren't from here. But they promised us all kind of things. I'm going to tell you this now. I went to one of the meetings before the strike come off. And the man told them during the strike that the union looked after them, gave them food, money to live on, all while we was on strike. But when the strike come off, that wasn't so. I went to the union office and asked for help, My wife, kid, and I been hungry. I've been out about a week and a half. And like I say, we lived one week to the next. But I walked in there, asked for help. He handed me a slip of paper, said, here, go to the welfare office. They'll give you a job. WPA, I believe it was. They'll give you a job working out on the streets, cutting grass, this, that, and the other. That made me so mad. I just crumpled that paper up in my hand after I got out. I went right straight to the mill, asked my job back. I went back to work. Now, like I say, my father and mother, brother and sisters were out on strike, but they wasn't feeding me.
How did they feel about it?
Well, they didn't feel right about it. They didn't feel good about me going back to work. But they didn't turn against me on account of it.
But they were much more for the union than you were then.
Oh yes, they were more for the union than I was.
Do you know why they were more for the union?
Just like I say, they was hoping the union would give them better living conditions.
But I just wondered if there was any history of union activity in your family.
No, sir. No. That's the first time any of my family ever been involved with a union.
Because as you
any
know,
kind of union
there's
work.
a fair amount of union activity in this part of Georgia
Yes, sir.
in the 20s,
Yes, sir.
and even before World War I. And I just wondered if they were part of that.
No, sir. As far as I know, none of my family ever been involved in a textile union. In fact, that's the first textile union I think ever come to this part of the country.
Now, one of the things that we're trying to get was some kind of flavor of the relationship between you workers and the supervisors and the management.
Well, the supervisors, back in those days, they worked their way up to that job. They didn't go off to school and come back and take a job like they do nowadays. Most all supervisors nowadays had to come out of college. Back then, you had to work your way up, especially in the weave room. The weave room supervisor had to know how to fix a loom, make it run. He had to know how to weave, fix, all that. He had to know every aspect of the weaving in that department. They worked their way up. But the department managers, they were men that had been to college, had a good college education. But the supervisors, they called them second hands back in those days. We started calling them supervisors the last 30, 40 years. They were people we were raised up with, kinfolks maybe. It was all a good working relationship. I told you a while ago that I joined the union kind of in self-defense. I was trying to be a loom fixer, and I needed some good skilled loom fixer to teach me, But he got where they wouldn't tell me anything because I didn't belong to the union. Before I joined the union, I went to the plant manager, Mr. Frank Asbury. He still lives here. I went to the plant manager and told him I was going to join the union. I told him why. He said, I don't blame you. I don't blame him. That's the only way I had to get information on how to fix looms and get the help, fix looms. I was a weaver then.
And you finally became a loom fixer?
Yes, I finally became a loom fixer and a supervisor. I was a supervisor when World War II broke out. I stayed supervisor about 2 years, I guess. And I was working at night, and the help got so bad, it was about to kill me. I had to go in at night, 10 o'clock at night, work till 6 in the morning, 8-hour shift. Well, those people come in and say, I'll run that stand of looms over there tonight, else I'll go home. They do that too. You couldn't fire them because you didn't have nobody to take a place. We have all the young people, everybody men going off to war. Just had the help just about run the place. I just said to myself, if I'm going to die, I got in bad health. I said, if I'm going to die, I might well just go over there and let Jap shoot me, a German shoot me. Maybe my wife get some insurance out of it. So I joined the service, joined the Navy. Stayed in the Navy 2 years and 4 or 5 months, something like that. 3 or 4 months, a little better than 2 years. I came back from service. I had to learn to trade while I was in the Navy. I learned to be an electrician. They'd give me an engineering course in electricity while I was in there. Well, actually I wanted to follow it up. But they didn't want to give me a job as an electrician. They wanted me to go back on my supervisor's job in the weave room. And I just told them, I said, if that's all you got for me, I'll go somewhere else. So the man that was chief electrician, he'd stand there. He told the employment manager, says, I'll be glad to get him if you'll let me have him. If you'll just sign him up, so I'll be glad to get him. So he took me down to the electric shop, put me to work as an electrician. I went to work for base pay. I believe it's 55 cents per hour. I went to work as an electrician, as an apprentice electrician. The job I was on, I think was paying 95 cents per hour.
Wow, you took a big cut.
The job they offered me was 95 cents per hour. I went to work at 55 cents per hour, 40 cents an hour less. 40 hours, that's $16 per hour, per week rather, less. It hurt for a while, but it didn't take me long with the training I had in the Navy to work my way up into a job paying just as much as I would have been making had I been in the weave room. So I don't regret the change I made.
I can believe that.
In fact, I think it was all for my betterment.
Now, when you all this time you were living in the mill village, were you?
Yes, sir. Excuse me.
I'll fix that.
Well, of course, I was paying on it.
Yeah.
Well, when I went in service. But while I was off in service, the mill company sold the houses to the employees. And my wife didn't have to buy a house. We already had our own home. That was a big help. My wife and I, we kind of buckled our, tightened our belt buckle, Done out a lot of things to buy some land and build us a home on it.
Yeah.
We're still paying on the home when I went in service. But guaranteeing you $100 a month, when you went in service back then. That was pretty good wages.
I know.
In fact, the industry didn't like it because FDR had put the soldiers and servicemen's wages up to $100 per month, minimum.
Yeah.
But that was a big help.
I know when I
had-
came out of service, I had a nest egg that I never would have had otherwise.
Yes, sir.
You know, I saved the money, and
Yes.
it was a big help.
People didn't save money, really hurt.
Yeah.
Got hurt. A lot
Well,
of people.
I just wondered, we hear a lot of talk about the kind of difference in attitudes of people in the mills and people outside the mills, and words, mean words like lint.
Yes, sir. Yeah, scab, such as that. Oh, I've been called many times, but I didn't let it bother me.
But well, the attitude of other people in the Grange towards the people in the mills, was that different?
Yes, sir. The ones that was out on strike, they the ones that had the bad attitude. People that didn't work in the mills, what they was riding on top of the fence, trying to get along both sides. But it's the ones that was out on strike, they one that felt hurt at us that went in, helping mills run the jobs, you know, without them. I could see their point, but I couldn't see letting my wife and child starve.
You had how many children?
I had one at that time.
But later you had...
Had two more later. I had three boys. The last boy died when he was a week old.
Oh, sorry.
And I raised two sons. And I'm thankful I stayed on here because the mill company helped me get my oldest boy. Yeah, I sent my oldest boy.
You started with about just talking the mill helped you send.
Yeah. The mill company helped me send my oldest boy to college. They gave away scholarships, you know, every year. My boy had had a bad operation. 7/8 of his stomach had been removed, some kind of ulcers. I wanted him to go to college because he wasn't going to be able to work in the mill or anywhere else with his health in as bad a shape he was in. So the mill company awarded him a scholarship. He had won a lot of honors his last year in school. And, that helped a lot, I think, helped him get the scholarship. But that scholarship helped me to get him through Georgia Tech. And he went on through Georgia Tech, got a good job with Lockheed. And he's still with Lockheed. Now he went on at night to University of Georgia at night school, paid him his own way then. He was married. He got a doctorate degree. What's that degree below a doctorate degree?
Masters.
Master's degree. He got his master's degree. And he has a good job now with Lockheed and Marietta. My youngest son, he didn't want to go to college. He wanted to go to work, buy him a car. But I let him do what he wanted to do. And anyway, he worked a while, and he saw he didn't like mill work too well, so he went into the post office business. And he went to Atlanta and started working in the post office. That was the first opening he got in Atlanta. Well, he married while he was working up there. And somehow or another he got interested in electricity. I was an electrician myself, but neither one of my sons was interested in it. But after he married, he got interested in electricity, and he started studying electricity at night, in a night school down in Atlanta. Well, the post office sent him to the University of Oklahoma and gave him a course in engineering up there, electrical engineering up there. And he's got a good job now with the post office. up at Buckhead at the book mailing plant. He looks, yes, sir. He looks after those conveyor belts and those central lights and everything, you know. He looks after those.
So they're all around you now.
So I got a lot to thank Mr. Callaway for.
Well, you certainly have.
I've thanked him personally
Yeah.
for letting me work here and educate my boys. And he helped me educate them. So I've got a lot to be thankful for. And I went back to work during the strike. But I hope nothing like that ever happen to anyone else again. I think a lot of time about people, you read about them taking guns out here and holding people up and all. You wonder what's in people's mind like that. Sometimes there's a reason for it. If you see your children suffering for want of something other and all, proper food and all, it'll make a man do that. I'm proud it never did push me to that point. But I wonder a lot of times about these people that get so violent, you know, robbing, stealing, beating and everything people up. I just wonder what's in their mind. If we could just look into their mind, maybe we could find some answers.
Well, the next big movement around here was the civil rights movement. Were you in the mills when they started hiring colored people?
Yes, sir. But it went off pretty smooth here.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mr. Callaway. He foresaw that coming. He built a swimming pool across town for the blacks. He had already built one for the whites over here. He knew he had to either let the blacks come in or they'll build them a separate one. So he built them a separate one across town. We never had any racial incidents at all here. Due to Mr. Callaway's forethought in this. He saw such just coming on and took the necessary steps to prevent it. This town owes that man a lot of thanks for what he's done for this town. I hope y'all get to talk to him.
I hope so.
He's one of the smartest men I've ever known in my life.
Now, when you first started working the mills, there weren't any colors in the mill, were there?
There's just a few. They done menial jobs like sweeping, cleaning the bathrooms, jobs that white people didn't want to run. They're just so nasty and dirty that white people wouldn't want to run them. That's the only jobs they had for colored people. Colored people just had to get out here and work around the yards, you know. Women would work in the houses, keeping house people, so white women could work. That's the only way they had to make a living up until then. But the transition went over here pretty smooth. Like I say, thanks to Mr. Callaway and his forethoughtness, foresightness, seeing it coming.
Did you
and
train
prepared
any
for
of them when they came into the mill?
Oh yes, I've trained some blacks.
How'd that go?
Oh, it was fine. I never had any problem with blacks. Now I'm a security guard now. I've been a security guard for the last 12 years. After I retired 13 years ago. And I'm called down to the plant a lot of times to get blacks to go out, you know, take them out. They won't leave the job. I don't have any problem with them.
They won't leave the job?
Sometimes the supervisor can't get them to leave the job. They get mad, you know. I just tell them, I says, friend, if you go with me, it won't cost you anything. I said, if you stay around here, I won't have to call the police to come get you. And if they come get you and take you to town, it's going to cost you some hard-earned money, some of your hard-earned money. And the mill come to be hurt at you, and won't hire you back. They think about it. They come on, go with me. So I never had a problem with them.
What's the attitude of the white workers?
Sir,
What's the attitude of the white workers?
it's changed a lot since the transition took place here at the mills. People don't pay no attention now. They work right side of a black man. A woman work right side of a black man. A white man work right side of a black woman. They respect each other. They don't associate with each other on the outside much, in social life. They still go their way and we go ours, but we don't have any racial instance on account of it.
Now, it's interesting that they work them side by side.
Yes.
Where I grew up, Winston-Salem, there have always been a lot of colors in the mill and
Yes, sir.
tobacco area. In fact, about 2/3 of it.
Yes, sir.
But they pretty well kept them in different departments.
Yes, sir.
It's interesting that they're mixing them here and it's getting along already.
I was reading a book a while back, made me think of that. That made me think of it, about King Solomon when he was building his temple. How King Solomon was able to place his hip so that neither envy or discord or confusion would interrupt his work, people. He had to be a smart man to do that. They say he's the smartest man ever lived, Solomon, King Solomon.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Callaway, I give him credit for having a lot of good common sense, foresightedness, forethoughtedness. He saw a lot of that coming.
Foundation's done a lot, hasn't it?
They have done a lot for this community here, as well as other parts of the state here. They've given a lot of money to the colleges. Like I say, people are just thankful for Mr. Callaway, that Callaway Educational Foundation, for what they've done here in this town. A lot of times, I can't recall in this one situation, but it'd be a family in bad need or something or other, maybe the worker in the family would be ill, couldn't work or something or other, and get down in bad shape. Or Mr. Callaway always come to their aid. But if they were part of the community, they didn't suffer too much.
Well, one kind of final question. When you were working in the mills first, they had many times more workers in the mill for the product they put out.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
So that textiles as an employer isn't nearly as important here as it used to be. Is that true?
Well, it's still important. To me it is. But the management in textiles has improved the machinery and the methods and everything so much that one person can do now what 10 used to do back when I started working at the plant. When I first started working cotton mills. They just improved the conditions so much. Yeah, I know back when I went to work, they had some colored women, they just continued sweeping. Lint falling on the floor, and continued sweeping. They had black men that go around and clean the loom when the warp would get off of them, material would be off the loom, they'd clean it up good. The black men do that. Now they got it so much improved that it don't have so much cleaning. You can go in any of these mills down here now, and the floor's waxed. It looks waxed and all. I could sit down on the floor and eat my lunch. Almost anywhere in the cotton mill now, especially the mill I work in.
we're going to be taking some pictures in the Inman Mills in South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And they suggested that we come into a mill that was operated in '34. They've got figures on how many people were employed and
Yeah.
showed us a picture. So then we're going to take it in 1990. Same building with just a handful, relatively a handful of people.
That'd be interesting.
But see the machinery. That's one of the things we're going to
Yeah.
be doing.
That'd be interesting to see.
Well, what we're
Read.
doing, we're working with these people in these humanities councils of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee, making a film about all of this.
Yes.
So what we'd like to do is come back next week and talk very much the same thing we've done here today,
Yes.
but just with videotape.
Yes.
So we'll call you up and we'll work out a mutually convenient time.
Well,
Just,
that
almost
sounds
exactly
interesting.
what you're telling us now.
That sounds interesting.
I'll just cut down on some of the questions, but, okay, good,
Yeah, I'd be proud to help you with it.
thank you.
Of course.
We just made arrangements to go to Hogansville. We're gonna be in Noonan, Atlanta, and then this weekend, we're gonna be meeting with some young textile workers, because we want to get them interested, you see.
Yes.
And so, let me show you a couple of people that we've already filmed. You might be interested in seeing. Yeah.
You mentioned Frank Asbury.
Yes, he was plant manager when that strike came off here. He left here shortly after that strike was pulled and went somewhere else. I forget where else, but when he retired, he came back here to live. I see him pretty often now. He plays golf.
You play golf too?
No, ma'am, I don't play golf. Well, Mr. Asbury plays golf, and that's the way he spends his free time, enjoys fellowship with the other golfers.
This is a woman in her 80s over in Columbus, Georgia, been working with us. She's 84, could you believe that?
84.
Isn't she
don't-
smart
don't
looking,
look
too?
it. She certainly don't look it.
This woman, that's her husband, photographed in 1914, and she's working with us. That's in the museum over in Columbus.
Mhm.
This is one of the young textile workers who are working with us. Now, you know what the girls used to look like in the
Oh, yeah.
30s.
Yeah,
She's
they've been disgraced for come out in clothes like that
I
in
know.
1930.
Here she is with her aunt, Angie Roster, and her aunt.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. She was in the union as Angie again. This is Angie's father, who was retired now, with his garden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's got
He's
a playhouse like I have.
Yeah, it's got an
a
old
yard
mountain.
out there in
Yeah,
my playhouse.
old mountain.
Horses for sale. Is that what?
The worms for sale.
Worms for sale.
He said he doesn't make
Glasses.
much money, but he has fun. These are just some more repeats on that.
Oh yeah.
That's where that lady lives.
Oh yeah. Nice
Nice.
like an old
Yes.
home.
It's a mill house
At a mill house.
that
huh?
she's fixed up. Yeah,
Mhm.
Which one is that?
that one. Annie's house.
Oh,
Let's see another thing. Oh yeah. This is another.
Let me turn on the light.
That's the thing.
you mentioned before a lot of people in town, other room fixers that joined the union at the time and went out on
Yes,
strike. Do any of them still live around here?
They moved to other towns. Some went to work for West Point Pep Rail. Some went to Griffin. Some went to Columbus, went to work.
Are you in touch with any of them?
Once in a while I see them, but I don't know just where they live. I see them once in a while.
Well, between now and the time to come back, maybe if you could think of it, maybe we could talk to some of them.
Okay.
This is D.W. Brooks, the fellow I was telling you about. He's the second richest man in Georgia now. He's 88. Got a big...
Okay, well, let me get a better look at him. Wait, I want to take a look. We had a D.F. Brooks here.
Yeah. He runs
When that
this
strike
big
come
called
off.
Gold Kiss. And he was talking about what the young fellows like Callaway.
Yeah.
You know, how they were very bright because they'd been to college. Their fathers usually hadn't. But,
Gold Kiss used to put out some advertising and tickle you to death.
yeah.
Like what?
You remember old Junior Samples on Hee Haw?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that.
He tells them too about using Gold Kiss on a bottomland corn, you know. Corn
Yeah.
got so heavy it sunk in, made a lake. And growing big catfish out there now, big as men.
Well, it's interesting that
That's Junior Samples.
Mr. Brooks is, even now at 88, is an avid fisherman.
Sure enough.
And he just took a big trip to Alaska at
Sure.
age 88
Salmon.
to go
Salmon
fishing.
fishing.
Told me just before he left. So it's very nice of you to see us. Thank
Well, I've enjoyed your visit. Sure have.
you. You're a Shriner?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Proud of it.
Yeah.
Proud
They've
to
done
be
a lot of good.
proud to be a
the Shriners
Shriner.
hospitals have done a lot of good.
Oh yes.
You know what they are doing.
I actually don't know what a Shriner is.
Oh, you should
Could you tell me what a Shriner is? I just heard that I know they have conventions.
Yes, sir. A Shriner is a group of Masons that have attained 32 degrees. You have to work as to get degrees as to be a Mason. To be a Mason, you have to have 3 degrees to start with when you join the Masonic Lodge.
What are they?
They're called the Entered Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master's degree. You get those 3 degrees. After you get those,
How do you get them?
you have to earn them. You have to go to school and learn certain things, you know, and stand tests on it in front of the lodge,
So it's
Just
a
like in-
Shriner school.
just like in school. No,
And you also have to have public service.
but that's before you can be a Mason. To be a Mason, you've got to have 32 degrees. 32 degrees, and then apply for membership in the shrine. It's not a degree, the shrine not a degree, but it's an association of 32 degree Masons that group themselves together for the betterment of the public. Back in July, really July 21st, the club I belong to here, the Shrine Club, we had a fundraising project. We sold hamburgers, and we raised $6,000 to pay for a wheelchair for a little child, a 10-year-old child that's got a deformed back.
Oh, yes, and the electric field where, yeah.
Yeah. We paid for that wheelchair plus other things on a medicine bill and all.
Yeah.
Taking her back and forth to Scottish Rite Hospital. Scottish Rite is a form of Masons. There's 2 kinds of Masons, Scottish Rite Mason and York Rite. Very little difference in them. But back when the Masons was about to play out, the year 1713, if you got time to listen to this, the year 1713, the Masons, they built cathedrals, you know, big buildings. Oh, they're the ones that done the building. They were the builders. A group of them got together in a pub over in London, year 1713. They decided that Masonry was dying out, but they wanted to keep it going, just for the good part of it, the better part of it. So they petitioned Parliament for a charter to form a Grand Lodge, and let this Grand Lodge charter subordinate lodges. It took them 4 years to get Parliament to grant them that charter. In 1717, Parliament granted this group of Masons a charter. So they formed the Masonic Order. Went along for about 20 years, a good many years, 40 years, I forget just how many years. But it got to be a little dissension in the craft. Some wanted to keep the old way of doing things, some wanted to improve and do things a new way. So they had a split up. The Scottish Rite on one side, York Rite on the other side. So that's why we have two different kinds of Masons now. But you take myself, I'm a Scottish Rite Mason and a York Rite Mason. I have 32 degrees of Scottish Rite, 32 degrees of York Rite. And I'm a Shriner. But I can go in a lodge, sit right beside a man. He might be York Rite or Scottish Rite, I don't know. It don't make any difference. It's kind of like the racial situation. It's dying out. We're just seeing it, we're doing a foolhardy thing. It's hurting us, improving ourselves. So we're just forgetting that and going forward to greater heights together. We're working together.
It's funny, when I was in high school, there were Young Masons chapters in my DeMolay, in my high school. But I've never heard of any recently. Do they still have the DeMolays?
The nearest DeMolay I know of is in Columbus.
I've just never heard of it.
We've tried to form some chapters here of DeMolay, but can't get enough of the young people interested in it.
Yeah.
In fact, Masonry is in bad shape itself, because we can't ask a man to join.
Yeah.
Like my next door neighbor, if I like him pretty well, I can't go down and ask him to join the Masons. It's against our rules. He's got to see something about Masonry that makes him want to be a Mason, to join. He's got to ask some Mason, somebody he knows to be a Mason, for a petition. He filled out that
So
petition.
it's not evangelical.
Yeah.
And that's you with your Shriner's hat on?
Yes, ma'am. Right there. That's my Scottish Rite cap there.
I'm wearing a tuxedo.
I don't have a picture of my York Rite. Excuse all that dust, I'm sorry. I live alone here. It's about once a month I get in and clean up real good, you know.
Well, I know exactly what you mean.
My grandchildren come in, help me get everything messed up.
Erica, Monica, and Josh. Are
Yeah, those are my grandchildren. I'm proud you noticed those. That's my granddaughter's room, that's my grandson's room.
When they come, this is where they stay?
They've spent most of the summer with me.
Oh, that's terrific.
Now they're out at their daddy's house right now. The little girl is 10, the boy is 13. The little girl will be 11 next month, September. I didn't know that was so dusty. Sorry about that.
Thank you very, very, very much.
You will, have you already got